In 2015, Mark Zuckerberg made an announcement that shocked Silicon Valley. He was taking 2 months of paternity leave after his daughter's birth. The media went crazy, but it wasn't the leave that was surprising, it was what he did next. He set up what he called baby boundaries. No work calls during morning baby time. No Facebook meetings during evening family dinner. And most shockingly, his own parents and in-laws had to schedule visits in advance. The richest millennial in the world was telling his family, "Even I need boundaries." But this isn't just another story about a billionaire's lifestyle. This is about something more, let me say, universal. Something you probably dealt with just this morning. Maybe it was that emergency text from your mom at 6 a.m. Or that aunt who keeps volunteering you for family events without asking. Or maybe it's those relatives who think your work from home means you're always available. Let's be honest, setting boundaries with family feels different. With colleagues, we can say, "I'm busy." With friends, we can say, "Not today." But with family, that's when things get a little bit complicated. In fact, a 2022 Harvard Business Review study found something fascinating. 85% of professionals say they have stronger boundaries at work than with their own families. To think about that for a second, it just means we're better at saying no to our boss than to our mother. Still on that moment when Zuckerberg set his baby boundaries, his mother-in-law later admitted in a CNBC interview that she was initially hurt. "I thought family should have unlimited access," she said. "I had to learn that boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping relationships healthy." But what happens when we don't set these boundaries? Well, Microsoft's research on remote work during the pandemic revealed something startling. The number one complaint wasn't about work pressure. It was about family members not respecting work hours. People were burning out not from their jobs, but from the constant push-pull of family expectations. Sound familiar? This brings us to Michelle Obama's eye-opening revelation in her memoir Becoming. When she became First Lady, everyone assumed her mother would move into the White House immediately. Instead, Michelle set a clear boundary that shocked Washington. Her mother would have her own separate apartment within the White House, with one strict rule: she needed to knock before entering their family space. Even in the most famous house in America, personal space mattered. Dr. Henry Cloud, author of Boundaries, puts it this way: your family pattern is like software that was installed without your permission. And just like software, it can be updated, but only if you're willing to push the update button. But here's what they don't tell you about setting family boundaries. It's not a one-time conversation. It's not a single dramatic moment. It's a series of small daily decisions that feel like tiny acts of courage or tiny acts of betrayal, depending on which side of the boundary you're on. Let's break down how successful boundary setters do it. 1. The buffer zone technique. Remember how Zuckerberg handled those family visit schedules? He didn't say no to visits. He created a system. Family members could use a shared digital calendar to schedule time. This wasn't just about convenience, it was brilliant psychology. It turned boundary setting from personal, "I don't want to see you," to procedural, "Let's find a time that works." 2. The clear communication framework. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, shared something interesting in her masterclass. When she first became successful, family members started treating her home like a hotel. Her solution? She created what she called the Sunday rule. Sundays were for scheduled family time, making it clear when she was and wasn't available without having to repeatedly say no. 3. The healthy distance protocol. Take Bill Gates' approach with his children. Despite his wealth, he established clear financial boundaries. His kids attended public schools. They had to earn their own money. When asked why, his response was profound. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to self-reliance. But here's where most people get it wrong. They try to set all their boundaries at once, like attempting to build a wall overnight. Instead, successful boundary setters use what I call the spiral method. Start with small wins. Begin with something simple, like not answering non-emergency calls during work hours. Create a designated response window for family messages. Set specific visiting hours, just like hospitals do. Build to bigger boundaries. Financial limits on lending money to family. Clear holiday rotation schedules. Explicit expectations about living arrangements. One thing about setting boundaries with family: the guilt is real, really real. A study from the Family Institute at Northwestern University found that people from close-knit families often experience physical symptoms of stress when setting boundaries: headaches, stomach issues, sleep problems. Why? Because our brains are literally wired for tribal connection. Setting boundaries feels like we're going against our biological programming. But perhaps there's a game changer. The same study found something fascinating. After 6 months of maintaining healthy boundaries, family relationships actually improved. Not just a little, but significantly. Think about it. Every family has that one unspoken rule: we don't say no to family. It's passed down like a cherished recipe, but sometimes, like outdated family recipes, it needs updating. Remember Zuckerberg's morning baby time rule? Something fascinating happened after that. Not only did his employees start feeling more comfortable setting their own family boundaries, but a surprising trend emerged in Silicon Valley. Executives started being more open about their family time blocks. One thing to always note when it comes to this boundary setting topic, though, is the first boundary isn't actually with your family. It's with yourself. It's that moment when you finally admit, just because I can be available 24/7 doesn't mean I should be. It's that Sunday afternoon when you're staring at your phone, seeing that family group chat explode with demands for your time, and finally deciding, my peace matters too. When you start setting boundaries, 3 things typically happen. 1. The pushback phase. The first week you don't instantly respond to every family message. You'll hear it. Are you okay? Are you mad at us? You've changed. 2. The guilt storm. This is when your brain starts playing tricks on you. Maybe I am being selfish. What if they need me? Good children don't act like this. 3. The breakthrough. And then, usually around week 6, something magical happens. Your family starts to adjust. Those 3 a.m. calls become 9 a.m. texts. The drop-by visits become scheduled catch-ups. The chaos becomes manageable. So how do you actually do this? Here's what actually works. The traffic light system. Green zones, times when you're fully available for family. Yellow zones, times when you're available for important stuff only. Red zones, your absolute no disruption periods. The key here is you have to stick to it. Like Zuckerberg's baby time rule, it only works if it's consistent. Let's break this down into real life. Instead of saying, stop calling me all the time, try, I block out 6 to 7 p.m. every evening for family calls. That's when I can give you my full attention. Instead of, you can't just show up whenever. Use, I love having you over. Let's set up a regular Sunday brunch tradition. Instead of, stop volunteering me for things. Say, please check with me before committing my time. I want to make sure I can follow through when I say yes. When you set healthy boundaries, you actually become more reliable to your family, not less. Why? Because your yes means yes, and your no means no. No more maybes. No more reluctant agreements. No more resentful favors. But there's something even more important happening beneath the surface. Every time you set a healthy boundary, you're not just protecting your time or energy. You're teaching your family something valuable about love. That real love has clarity. That respect and accessibility aren't the same thing. That you can be close without being enmeshed. But what if when you're able to set these boundaries but they face their biggest test, the holidays? Let's be real. December rolls around, and suddenly every boundary you've built feels like it's made of tissue paper. You know how Zuckerberg handled his first holiday season after setting his family boundaries? He and Priscilla chose to spend Christmas morning just with their daughter. No extended family. No huge gathering. Just 3 people and a Christmas tree. The media called it antisocial. His family probably wasn't thrilled, but he understood something crucial. Sometimes the smallest moments need the strongest boundaries. But what about real emergencies? This is where most people's boundaries collapse entirely. And look, let's be clear, if there's a genuine crisis, you show up. That's family. But here's the trick. You need to define what counts as an emergency before the emergency happens. Your cousin's cat having hiccups? Not an emergency. Your sister's car breaking down at midnight? Now that's different. And then there's the ultimate boundary test. The moment money enters the conversation. You get the call. Hey, I need to borrow some money. Don't tell anyone else in the family, but now this is where your boundaries need to be titanium strong, because here's what successful boundary setters know. Financial boundaries aren't just about money, they're about respect. So how do you maintain boundaries when everything and everyone is pushing against them? Here's what works. 1. The broken record technique. Remember how your parents would repeat the same thing until you got it? Time to return the favor. When family pushes back, keep repeating your boundary. Same words, same tone, like a broken record. I know this is different from how we usually do things, but this is what works for me. I know this is different from how we usually do things, but this is what works for me. I know this is different from how we usually do things, but this is what works for me. 2. The appreciation shield. Every time you reinforce a boundary, wrap it in appreciation. I love you and I need this boundary. I value our relationship and this is important to me. I want to be there for you and I need to respect my own limits. 3. The future focus. Instead of defending your boundaries, talk about why they matter. I'm setting these boundaries now so I can be more present when we're together. This isn't about creating distance. It's about making our time together better. As your boundaries get stronger, something unexpected happens. Your relationships actually deepen. Why? Because you're no longer showing up out of obligation. You're showing up by choice. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, social media and family boundaries. Those little devices in our pockets have turned every family member into a 24/7 access point to our lives. The solution? Digital boundaries need to be as clear as physical ones. No responding to family social media comments after 8 p.m. Family group chats get checked twice a day, not every 5 minutes. Social media muting is not the same as family exile. This is where most boundary setting advice stops. But the real secret, maintaining boundaries is like maintaining a garden. It's not a one-time task. It's a seasonal practice. Your family boundaries at 25 won't work at 35, and what works at 35 might feel ridiculous at 45. That's not failure, that's growth. Just like Zuckerberg had to reset his boundaries when his second daughter arrived, and again when his company faced new challenges, your boundaries need to breathe. They need to expand and contract like a living thing. Major life changes will test every boundary you've built. Getting married, having kids, career changes, moving cities, health challenges. Each one requires a boundary reset. Here's the beautiful part. If you've built a strong foundation, these resets feel more like updates than complete overhauls. Here's what nobody tells you about long-term boundary success. The strongest boundaries often feel invisible. They're not walls you have to defend. They're rivers that naturally flow between you and others. When you reach this level, you stop saying, I can't, and start saying, this is how I do things. The shift is subtle but powerful. Think of it like a dance. At first, you're stepping on toes, missing beats, apologizing constantly. But over time, you and your family learn the rhythm. You know when to step forward and when to step back. The dance becomes natural. The real win isn't when your family stops pushing your boundaries. It's when they start respecting them before you even have to enforce them. When your mom texts, I know it's your quiet time. Call me when you're free. That's gold. The most powerful part, you're not just setting boundaries for yourself. You're creating a new normal for your entire family. Your kids learn that love doesn't mean constant availability. Your siblings see a new way to handle family dynamics. Your parents witness a healthier way to love. Remember how we started with Zuckerberg's baby boundaries? The story didn't end there. Those boundaries created ripples that changed workplace culture, family dynamics, and how we think about success and family life. Your boundaries can do the same. They might start small, a do not disturb during work hours, a no unannounced visits rule, a 24-hour notice policy, but they grow into something bigger. A legacy of healthy relationships that could impact generations. Setting boundaries with family isn't about building walls. It's about building bridges, stronger, healthier bridges that can carry the weight of real relationships. Because at the end of the day, the greatest gift you can give your family isn't your constant availability. It's your authentic presence, your genuine energy, your true self. And sometimes, protecting that requires saying the hardest word in the family dictionary. No. Or better yet, no and I love you. Remember to like and subscribe for more insights on building stronger relationships and creating a life that works for you. Drop a comment below sharing your own boundary setting experiences. Let's learn from each other.